Welcome back to Prison Architect. It's the tutorial series, and I'm your host, longtime listener. Be sure to drop a like, hit the subscribe button, and comment below. In this episode, we are going to go over the kitchen. I'm not going to go over the canteen in this one because there is so much going on between these two rooms that we probably want to split it up into two episodes. Now, pay no attention to the number of cookers, fridges, and sinks that you see here because this is just me in a sandbox throwing a bunch of stuff in there and really not having done the math to figure out how many I needed of each item to kind of give me the mix that I want to accomplish my goals. But that said, let's get into like what you need in the kitchen in general and some strategies onto how to make it efficient. So if we look at the requirements, the room size does not matter, but you've got to have a cooker, a fridge, and a sink. The cooker is what your cooks are using to actually prepare the meals. The fridges are where the ingredients are stored, and then the sinks are where they are going to wash the trays. It's also a good idea to have some bins in here, as well as perhaps a recycling bin. Both of those items actually improve the quality of the kitchen, so that's good to know. Now, another thing to consider here is if you're going to have inmates that you have using prison labor assigned to the kitchens to cook, they can steal knives, forks, and spoons as contraband. So make sure you've got those metal detectors. As always, contraband is one of the things that you always want to try and be conscious of. Another thing to be aware of is as far as utilities, cookers and fridges do require electricity, so you will have to have a electric cable running to those items, and then the sinks obviously require water. Also, a good idea to have sprinklers not only in the kitchen but also straddling the walls on each side of the kitchen because a fire can break out. You want to have sprinklers there that will immediately put it out if that happens. Um, let's see here. The each refrigerator, each fridge can hold 20 of two types of ingredients. Each cooker can cook up to 10 of two types of ingredients, and each sink can wash 40 trays per hour. Now, those numbers, when you just kind of try and break them down, don't necessarily, like, to me, that doesn't make sense. So, what I did for you to try and make this easy is I went and I just picked a number of 80 inmates just to try and have a starting point or somewhere to kind of give you an idea. I probably should have done 100 because it's an even number and maybe easier to work with in general. But bottom line is if you've got 80 inmates and you want to serve 3 medium quantity, medium variety meals today. So, like, for example, if I go into, where is it? Policy. Medium, and if I was to do medium on this one, 3 of those per day for 80 inmates, I would need 6 cooks, 4 cookers, 7 fridges, 3 sinks, and a bin. Okay? Let's say I was to go ahead and make it high quantity, high variety. I would need 10 cooks, 8 cookers, 16 fridges, still just 3 sinks, and still just 1 bin. So the number of sinks and bins doesn't really skyrocket all that high because they can wash 40 trays per hour. They're burning through those pretty quickly. So basically what I would think of it as is if I've got, say for example, this is going to do 80 trays between those two. Now I've got 80 inmates. Why would I need an extra sink? Probably always just a good idea to have a little bit extra of everything just to give you room to grow should you ever need it. So that's just kind of a general rule of thumb. So that's what you would do if you had high and medium quantities and varieties, respectively, for 3 meals a day. I'm not going to go over what you would need for low quantity and low variety because even though that's going to save you money, that is going to make your inmates more irritable. You do not want to do that unless it is to finish a grant. Now, if you're going to try and do 2 meals a day, it would make it, let's see here. If we would, let's say, for example, do 80, like if you're going to do 2 meals a day, probably a good idea to either do high quantity or high variety to try and make up for it. So that's what I kind of calculated here. It would be for high quantity and medium variety, 10 cooks, 8 cookers, 14 fridges, 3 sinks, and a bin. For medium quantity, high variety, regardless of whether you serve 2 or 3 meals a day, you still just need 6 cooks, 4 cookers, 8 fridges, 3 sinks, and a bin. So the general takeaway here is if you go with high quantity, you're going to need more refrigerators as a result. If you go with high variety, um, the number of both comes down, which is awesome. So I like to maybe just try and stick with medium of both. But if you're going to go high on one or the other, go with high variety, not high quantity, because the quantity is where you just need extra space to store those items in the refrigerators. So I know that that's probably a lot to digest, and you're probably going to have to rewind. But I wanted to throw those numbers in there because the kitchen can be crucial. If you don't have the right number of items or staff in there, you're going to have a supply and demand issue where there's not enough meals for the inmates, or there are too many and you're spending more money than you need. You've got food waste, etc. So try and kind of stick to some of those general numbers. And if you only have 40 inmates, cut those numbers in half. If you're growing, this just gives you something to kind of start with as a general rule of thumb. But that's it for this one. So I hope that this was helpful. I know that that's a lot to digest. Again, no pun intended, digestion, kitchen. But hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, comment below, and we'll see y'all next time.